coming to you from the rotisserie. Chris and Jared about to open up our next card and learn what we're about to talk about. Chris, looks like he's opened it. He beat me to it.
There's a lot to do in a day at the cafe. Caring for the guests that come through our doors, daily tasks that allow things to operate smoothly, and more. How do you keep seeing the cafe with fresh eyes even when you're in there every day? Good question. How do you balance doing what is required and what is possible? Cost of labor dictates we need to be out at a certain time, but there's still more that can be done. Oh, man, I got a riff on that one.
I was going to say that second question goes for every position in the world and every work you can do anyway. So this isn't just a cafe question now. I could see parallels, dude.
Yeah, same thing with the first question.
Yeah, I've got a beautiful mind going on. Russell Crowe.
How can you keep seeing your job with fresh eyes even though you do it every day?
Guys, look at that. This is actually one of the key ingredients of being an owner is not being so literal that you can't think outside the bun, okay?
Did you say think outside the button?
I said think outside the bun.
The bun.
Is that Taco Bell? Think outside the bun.
It might be Taco Bell.
Feels like Taco Bell.
Outside the bun.
Yeah, anyways. There is a lot to do in a day at a cafe, everybody. Caring for the guests that come through our doors, daily tasks that allow things to operate smoothly, and more. You know what? I don't know if and more is there. I think those are the things. That's actually it. If I were to be totally honest, there's daily tasks, sure, but those the and more is still going to be a daily task potentially, right? Stuff will come up always, but you could argue that everything is kind of built into those two places for me. You have the haves and the have-nots.
This one's going to be good. I could tell. We're on a roll already.
Do you feel like I'm doing any infringing on copyrights when I do my cool noises?
No.
Good, dude.
Which copyright?
I don't know. That one sounded like...
What was that?
I think that was a Yahoo.
Yahoo. Yahoo. They're not even a company anymore.
Hit the pitch. Yeah, dude. You guys don't even do stuff anymore. You don't even go here.
Dude, you don't even go here.
Where do you want to start? How do you keep seeing the cafe with fresh eyes even you are in there every day? This is just... I mean, how do you do that at all? It's a practice. We can start there. There's a practice. Human beings, you have to understand. First of all, check out your brain. Your brain wants to save calories. There's a science to that. And the way your brain saves calories is it puts things on autopilot, okay? The things that are on autopilot that you can maybe reference in your day-to-day life would be like those times when you're driving and you realize that you haven't even been paying attention to anything and yet you went 10 miles. Or when you're reading your book and you're thinking about something else and you're like, oh crap, I got to go back and read that because I wasn't paying attention at all, even though somehow you were reading your book at the same time. Those are two like of the most glaring examples, even though I could go through more, of what happens when your brain is trying to save calories. It's there to simplify what you do. This is a classic response. So in order to ensure that you're paying attention every single day, you have to set prompts. As one example, set prompts that make you decide to look and think and pay attention. You also could ensure that you are, when you're passionate about things and you get into flow state, you might be one of those lucky people who can find that every single day at work in some capacity. That'll allow you to get there as well. And that's really, really fun and great. I've been there many times. The other thing is making sure that you have teams and culture set up so that, and again, this is kind of a prompt thing, but that it's what you do, right? It's, do we talk about X, Y, and Z every single day? Is somebody on the team looking to, and this is a lot where it could fall on leaders, ensuring that we're paying attention. And maybe lastly, because I'm giving you a lot, straight up systems where you have to go on a checklist. And that might, again, kind of fall into part one, but we should dive into all of that. For me, though, I need all of those things because as a human, I'm just going to have different days. There's going to be days when I'm more engaged with one of those things than the others. There's going to be days when I'm having a hard time in life, which we all will, and that's where something like a checklist and a team really can come into play, where it's just like, well, why don't you just pay attention? What happens to, I think, both Chris and myself, even though I'm sure we have our human days where we just come in and do what we do and leave, is that you might just be burdened with glorious purpose that you see it every time. I think the more experienced you are and the more you have writing on a situation, the easier it is to have both the positive and negative stress of being able to see every single detail going on. And that also has kind of been something that I noticed too with myself, right? We've been doing this coffee, hospitality, and leadership thing for, cumulative 20 plus years each. So with that, like any professional, you can come in, even if you haven't been standing behind a bar or behind a register, pretty much anywhere in your company, you can come in and see 10 to 20 things that you'd like to potentially see better or see that could be done at the level that you used to practice. And so I kind of always have the problems of seeing those things fresh every single day. And it's a struggle to not overwhelm my team with dropping every single detail on them.
You might be missing one of the key elements of
That's why you're here, dude.
why you're able to see those things so clearly. We'll just take your experience and throw it out the window. That's a
Okay.
big part of it.
Yep.
But you're disconnected. You're not
Right.
working on the floor.
Right.
You're removed enough from the situation to be able to see it clearly. And
Every
that
day.
is one of the biggest things that you can do. And there are a few ways that you can do it. One of the most powerful ways I found is to stand in line when you don't have to. See your work literally from a different perspective.
Yeah.
You come in every day, you go to the back, you throw your apron on, you clock on, and then boom, you're at your post, whether that's concierge station or you're behind the bar, and that's how you see the whole cafe. Take 10 minutes. Come to work 10 minutes early, get in line, and while you get in line, look. Don't just stand in line. Like, actively pay attention. Set some intentions. Okay, like, what do I see? Like, what do I see? Okay, the condo stand looks like that. I don't usually see it from this angle. That's interesting. Oh, I'm not heads down making 300 lattes, so I can see that the merch shelf, all these sweatshirts are folded kind of weird. The shelf talkers are actually sideways and scattered all over the place. Oh, from this angle, I can see that there's crumbs that are under that banquette that have probably been there for what looks like 6 months. I never saw that from my point of view. So literally just getting into a different point of view physically is a huge thing, and being able to disconnect from the work that you're doing, seeing it from a different angle. And that works like in the cafe. There's a whole chapter in Jocko's book about it when they're, running their Navy SEAL training, and one of the biggest problems they have is like everyone's in one big pack and no one has the vantage point to be able to just step back 2 or 3 feet, really be able to see the lay in the land, because everyone's looking down the scope of their gun, like trying to find the enemy. But you need to be able to have that complete picture to be able to see what you might need to work on.
Yeah. There's so much opportunity for you everywhere to be able to do that by allowing yourself even the space. You're right. Stand in line, where are the touch points, right? And hopefully you're being directed by your team, but maybe you're not. And maybe that's even something you notice. I'm actually not being directed as a guest, or nobody else is either. Okay, it looks like I order there. Where do you think my drink and my food's going to come out? And like, what if it's my first time in? Do you think I would be able to find the condiment stand easily on my own? Do I know where, X, Y, and Z is? The bathrooms maybe. And sure, like you don't have to, as a concierge, every single time be like, and the bathrooms are there and the condiment stand's there and this is that. But you could also be paying attention to, body language of guests and being able to interact there. And guests actually be a really great opportunity to help you engage with the day with fresh eyes every single time, because you have an opportunity to ask them something. And that something doesn't have to be, again, like a 5-minute conversation at the register where you talk about clothes and their favorite movies and your favorite movies and their music and then your favorite music and then you like their shoes again. And then it's like, no. What if you just ask them like one question about something that we do as a company, and then heard what they had to say back and then paid attention? Maybe there's an opportunity to engage with them down the line. Maybe there's an opportunity for you to engage with your or have your baristas engage and talk to them about what coffee they're getting in their drink today. You are totally right. Being able to create intentionally space to think and pay attention is one way to always stay engaged with your work. And that's beyond, right, using any other prompts and or human beings on your team to like ask for help or systems.
Yeah. Another good way to see things with fresh eyes is to give yourself small projects or focuses or set some intentions within, within the scope of things that have to be done. We're working in a cafe or whatever job you have. In any job, there's a certain number of boxes that have to be checked. There is a job to do. You have to do that job. Within that job, what other opportunities are in there? So it can be something on the barista level as basic as like, okay, cool. I'm not really good at pouring tulips. So this week, in addition to doing all my other work, I'm really going to hone in on this latte art thing. Now that is it's just deeply engaging in the craft. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily guest focused, but it, pays off in a guest focused way that the better you are at what you're doing, the more engaged you are with what you're doing, the more fun you're going to have doing it. Tell me that's not infectious. I believe that it is.
It is.
And finding little, paying attention is a huge thing. I mean,
so huge.
Again, we keep coming back to the same place, but you really have to make the choice to care enough about what you're doing to want to do these things. And the gnarly thing is, like, most days are pretty much the same.
Sure.
Like, whether you're a barista, whether you're a business owner, and to look at the opportunity that's there and to say, like, yeah, I'm going through my checklist today and that's what I'm doing. Or saying, I have to do this checklist. I get to do this checklist no matter what. And then within that, there's 1, 2, 3 things that I really, really want to work on. And use those things to stay super engaged. I mean, it's not so different than what we do. We're having a conversation right before this conversation about, I have these things on my mind and I'm not really sure how to communicate them in the most effective way.
Yeah.
So even though, been owning this company for 6 years, we're in the same position, leading a group of people, there's still, there's this opportunity that we have to level up our skills to make the whole company better. And we have to look for them. And it requires, calling back to the last episode, you have to take ownership of that and understand that, like, I'm not as good as I could be.
Yep.
And there's the opportunity for me. And yeah, I can be better. So that's going to require, it's going to require me learning a new skill or going deeper into a new skill. And you can't do that without looking at things in a different way. You do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always gotten. And if you're not happy with it, you have to change the thing that you're doing.
Right. I think that's a fantastic example, my friend.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's good. That's where I was going to go too. The second place. How do you balance doing what is required and what is possible? And then quote, the secondary portion, the part B of that, right? Cost of labor dictates we need to be out at a certain time, but there's still more than can be done.
So the second part of this seems like a cop out for a shitty close. I gotta say, that's how I read this.
And I read that too. I also read, but you could also take that one further, right? And be like, you only can afford a certain amount of people on the floor per whatever hour as well. And again, that comes down to putting the assumption that like people aren't capable of getting enough done.
Sure. So,
which are both actually not good question, like not fair statements, because I think it's bullshit both ways.
Yeah, let's go into the close thing specifically, and then we can look at it from a more broad point of view to where, well, okay.
Why don't you just break down?
Here's what you need.
Go.
Here's what you need. This is really, 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 really simple. All you need is a standard.
Right.
The standard says, this is how we make espresso. This is how we run a meeting. This is how we close the cafe. These are the things that need to be done because this is what it needs to look like, feel like. That's it. Once you have that standard and you have a proof of concept of that standard, the only reason to not hit that standard is you're not preparing enough, you don't have the skills, you're not working quickly enough or diligently enough, like that's
or
it.
Not training it.
There's a million different places that could fall apart, but the standard is really what you need. So if we say that the cafe needs to look like this at closing time, and it's not looking like that, like it's not because we ran out of time. It's not because there's still more to do. It's just because, well, who knows what fell apart? It could be a million things. Like
Yeah, you could ask
anybody
questions.
who's ever worked at a cafe, or I've never worked in a restaurant, but I assume it's the same thing because it was kind of like that in fast food too, that the close kind of starts at the beginning of the day.
Yeah, you start
It's
closing
like,
the minute the store's
you
open.
know what I mean? Like,
And you should have that
all
mentality.
the ducks have to be in a row for there to be a smooth close, because if everybody doesn't play their part starting at 5:30 in the morning, all of that falls on the closers.
Yeah.
So you really have to have the culture that's looking after the store all day
Yeah.
so that the closers can close effectively. So I'm not saying that like closers are lazy or anything like that. I'm saying like it's everybody's responsibility. Cat and Cloud Podcast is brought to you by La Marzocco. We use La Marzocco machines in all of our cafes and have been fans of La Marzocco for decades. They consistently push the bar forward in terms of what's possible with espresso machines while continually honoring their heritage and company culture. Usually, when companies push the envelope, you end up with fancy, superfluous gadgets that are quirky to use and prone to failure, but this isn't the case with La Marzocco. They build machines with usable features that are also workhorses. Go to lamarzocco.com or follow them on their social channels to stay up to date with everything they have going on.
Here's the thing, everybody. We don't have to show off and say that we make house syrups by ourselves, okay? Some of you might be good at making syrups, but not all of us are good at making syrups. And you know why? Because that's not the point of our jobs. We have people who could help us with that. And so we at Cat and Cloud use Holy Cacao. They are amazing, not only at chocolate syrups, but at all the other amazing flavored syrups, vanillas. You got Demerara sugar syrup. That one's actually pretty banger, and many, many more. So do yourself a favor, reach on out, shout out Wyatt, the owner. You know you love it. Check them out at holycacao.com. I mean, you just have to identify what's going on, right? It's where you start, right? You start with a standard. These things can get done. Floors mopped, stations cleaned, dishes did, they lined up, there's whatever. You got your list. You got your standards of not only a list, but how it's supposed to look, right? There's clarity there. If it's not happening, then you actually can go through the day, every single day or whenever it's happening, and figure out what's going on, right? If it's the same people every single time, then you can look at how they work through the day. You can start exactly where you said. Start in the morning and look maybe at right around the turnover level and like say, okay, what was the cafe left like from the morning or wherever, your restaurant, your place, what was it left like? And if it was left, anything but perfect, then you can say, cool, okay, I know that there's a place that I need to start communication, right? Things are going to add up in the day if you as leaders or as a team just allow them to. And I absolutely, unfortunately, see this everywhere. We perform so much better on busy weekends than we do during the week, because during the week, you feel like you can just chill. And during the weekends, even if you're getting out a little bit later, you're crushing it all day because you have to be, because there's these prompts by guests to stay on top of your work. During the week, everybody seems to be on these levels unless they're being pushed, and like the accountability is high, which is part of what we're talking about, where you kind of just like, you like let it be sometimes, dude. You chill because there's not like a bunch of, you have like 20 minutes where there's no guests coming in here and there. And you need to be able to, as leaders, not allow for those times to be wasted time. The day still operates the same way on the weekends as it does during the weekdays, even if there's one or two people more working on the weekends than there are during the weekdays. This is literally built so that you can do the same amount of work with the appropriate amount of people. It's busier, so you add more people on the weekend. You're not able to close faster because of those extra two people. You're able to do the same amount of work because there's so much more workload on the weekend. This is a straightforward thing. If you want to see a successful cafe, look for the ones that are busy during the week, not the weekends, because that's the ones that are going to be making that. Same with restaurants. Weekends are going to pack themselves. Anyway, so all that to say, weekends are going to pack themselves. Everybody goes out on the weekend. So what you got to do, though, is identify what's going on. And it is as simple as that. If you need to schedule more people during the first half of the day, you still can rework your scheduling and have the same, like the appropriate labor metric. You might just need to You know, you pay. There's so many things
Well,
you can do here. It's just frustrating.
here's what we can't do right now. We can't diagnose why you didn't do your close on time here because
Right.
there's an infinite number of reasons. But I'll take this in a completely different direction. You know, this applies to everything we do. The idea of having a standard and also knowing that that standard can't be perfect because perfect's unattainable, but you
Yeah.
need to be comfortable with it. So in every department that exists. So Weiser and I often have this conversation because I'm a real particular guy and I can get lost in making things perfect. And sometimes that can be frustrating. So when we set out to make a podcast or create a video, whether it's, with me or Mark or whoever, we need to have in our minds, like, okay, what is this? What's our end game here? Because if you've ever made a video, you can edit it, you can tweak it forever. And you can also never feel like, oh yeah, it's perfect. It's done. It's exactly what I want it to be. Or, with a podcast, if I just would have said that one thing, can we go back in there and edit it? And then I'll listen to it again. And then I'm like, oh man, I left something else on the table. Oh, let's go back in. Let's hit record again and edit it again and re-edit it. We can re-edit this episode. We could listen to this episode that we're recording right now.
Sure.
Every week and keep adding things to it. And we could do one podcast for the entire year and it'd be really, really, really good. And it still wouldn't be perfect.
Right.
But that's not the way things work. We have a spec that says, you know what? We have our body of knowledge. We come in and we have thoughtful conversations with each other. And then whatever you get is what you get. We can take something out if we said something we later really didn't feel like we believed. Everybody misspeaks sometimes, no big deal. But for the most part, what you hear is what we're talking about. And as we relaunch, we've committed to doing one every week, So whether or not we come in and have the best podcast that we've ever recorded doesn't actually matter. What matters is that we record a podcast every week.
Right.
And it's going to be good enough.
And that's our standard.
That's our standard.
Right.
And the same thing for a video. It's there on a clip for videos. Like we want to make a video about coffee brewing, coffee knowledge every other week. So once we know that, we fit the standard into the framework. And that means we leave some things on the table. We don't have a production crew. We have Michael Weiser. He's a really talented guy, but he's one guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we don't have a script writer. Mark's doing his own things, and I give him like the tiniest bit of like guidance if he asks for it, but he's really doing it all himself. So that's the team right there. It's this 2-person team cranking these things out, and limitations are great because no matter where you are in your life, no matter where you're at in your career, the ability to do more with less will never let you down. And you do that in different ways, again, at different times. Like we did it when we opened Portola. We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of space. We didn't have a lot of time. We were working against the clock on a shoestring budget. And it's easy to go around the corner, less than 2 blocks away, and you see Verve, and they have a lot of money, and they've been there for a while, and they've been able to repolish the space, and it looks really pretty, and go in there and stand, and you can be like, yep, our place is just not going to look like this.
Yeah.
We have a different spec that we're going to meet, and we have a different promise. Like we're not promising out of the gate to create the most beautiful cafe that you've ever seen and end up in a design magazine. That's not our spec.
No, never has been.
Our spec is like, we're going to create a place where work matters, where people feel connected to what they do. And you can come in as a guest and you're going to feel better when you leave. Like that's our promise, or like, some version of that.
Yeah,
that's like kind of
summation.
That's us riffing. Right. So I get into this thing, which I just feel like I need to say. It comes up on staff, and I notice it in myself too, though. This need to kind of state our mission or our vision verbatim, and it doesn't need to be like that.
No, I don't.
It doesn't need to be like that at all, and sometimes it feels just a little corny or inauthentic when you say it verbatim, and it doesn't need to be said verbatim.
Well, yeah, because I feel the same way.
Yeah, so I just wanted to put that out just for everybody.
Well, especially the people who might listen on our team are like, oh, they're not even saying the mission right.
Yeah,
And I don't think
exactly.
they're thinking it like that, but they're like, you do need to know that to be able to articulate a mission and a vision well, you actually need to be able to speak about it in more than just the exact words we
Yeah,
give you.
it's an ethos,
Yeah.
and it manifests in, like, again, in the spirit of that thing, but you'll say it in different ways at different times. That's just a little
That's just, but it's wise.
a little
It's
side
it's a
nugget.
little
So
wise something.
that's what we were promising,
Right.
And then with our small SBA loan
Mhm.
and the clock that we had, which was basically cool. We need to make some kind of money so that we can actually live. Like, you put those two really big limitations together, and then we have our standard, and it's like, cool. And what does that standard mean? That standard means that our friends did the cabinets for us,
Yep.
that had never built commercial cabinets before. Someone else did the countertops for us who had never built commercial countertops before. We did the demo by hand. We've never done demo before. We're calling in favors. Like, who believes in us, who's willing to give us a deal, and we end up with a cafe that's really bare bones.
Yeah.
If you look at pictures of Portola from year one, there's not a lot in there.
No.
There's none of the stuff on the
bones.
wall. It's Nick Vargas hooked us up with some art, and the mural's awesome. But other than that, it's just like, okay.
I mean, even the merch shelves are so different now than they were then. They were just totally bare bones.
What can you do with what you have? And that's the name of the game, and knowing what you're going to compromise on and what you can't.
Mhm.
And we could not compromise on our mission or vision or our values. That was out of the question. But yeah, we didn't have $1 million budget. Who the fuck cares?
Yeah.
And that problem, that thing just faces you wherever you go, that you are never going to work without constraints,
Mhm.
or probably most of us aren't, because most of us aren't
If you
funded
get to work without constraints, that's awesome for you.
like, how are you going to work without constraints? So wherever you're at, deciding what's good enough for you, and then how you're going to be able to do it. That's what work is.
Right.
That's also a good way to see work with fresh eyes, or see like, oh man, if I had this and that and then and that. It's like, what you don't. So you have to be creative. You have to figure it out on your own.
You have to be creative.
What can you do within the box that you have?
And then setting whatever those standards are in such a way that they're attainable, which I think you're alluding to. We haven't said it specifically, right? If you try to give yourself these, and you said it's not perfect, but you can give yourself a list of what perfect would look like and then never achieve it. And that means you maybe need to adjust what, if you're using quote unquote a closing list, but anywhere, your expectation is of what it needs to look like. What are the priorities in any work that you do? And those are them, right?
Yep.
And you said it pretty much without being hyper specific and saying that portion is like, we said we're going to do this once a week, and we're doing this once a week. And so if it's a close or if it's anything in the day, it's like, what has to be done? What has to be done so that tomorrow is awesome, or that today is delivering on your mission, your vision, and your values, I guess, is one of the simplest ways to look at that. Your standards of execution. And so if you're in a cafe, right, you have to hit the recipes. You have to keep it clean. You have to keep it organized. You have to serve it at a certain speed. You have to engage the guests at least this amount of expectation, and it needs to feel, sound, and basically be like this. And when you say that, I've given you probably a list of no more than 10 things that you could probably like put on that list. And yeah, you could totally be the person who breaks them down and says what everything is perfectly. But if you were to just iron out what those things are and say, make sure that those stay like this or at this level all the time, everybody could get on that page, and you actually would be attaining your goals every single day. And then the extra stuff that you want to do that would make it better, one, there's space for it. And we talked about this a few weeks back. If you have the systems, which that essentially what I just gave you is a system. As long as you know how those things need to work, or how to do the work to make those things operate, you then can have all this brain space, because you have 2 to 7 people accomplishing these 10 things throughout the day. And there's somebody on your team always has space to be achieving more. And that actually, no holds bars, no excuses, is absolutely possible, unless you're getting hammered. And if you're getting hammered by guests, high fives. Like, that means you've earned that work, and that's fantastic. Like, that's the ultimate win. So, it's nice to be able to have those things set up so that you're able to do more without having to necessarily add more resources to the table, right? You're able to create. And that's the magic of knowing for sure that like, hi, I'm alive and I'm a human being, and I'm doing such a good job at this work that I'm able to add more to the table. And something that I can do is really valuable here. What is that? And you got a list there too that you can pick from. Just don't pick 20 of them, pick one or two, and feel good about yourself. There's never I just really believe that there's always space, I guess, and time to if you put the intention in and you put the thinking time and you put the perspective there, there's always an opportunity to do what you need to do. You just need to be able to prioritize it and let things go, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where there different types of work, but the same thing. Where it's with a cafe close. We need to be out at a certain time. If there's been if you've done it once, you can do it again.
Yeah.
If there's been a perfect close once and everything was dialed in, you can repeat that. And if you didn't, something broke down along the way.
Yeah.
Who knows what it was, but something broke down.
Go figure it out.
It's completely fixable. It's not like, oh, we could do a perfect close if we just had another person. Maybe you do work somewhere that's really putting the squeeze on you. I don't know. I've always had it. It can happen, but I think more often than not, people are just like, you know what? It's the end of the day. It's really easy to leave those crumbs under the counter. You know what? No one's really going to notice if I don't pull the mat up and like mop under the mat, because it's going to get dirty again the next day. And Mark does his grounds on the grounds thing anyway. And, whatever. It just lives there. And I see why people do that, Like,
sure.
That's probably more of what's happening than my boss doesn't give me enough time or, whatever. We're having some sort of labor squeeze. And sorry, I was just trying to roast Mark in a gentle way.
that was like a real roundabout way.
It's okay, a real roundabout way.
I put my grounds on the floor,
I don't think I
too.
did it really well. Sorry, Mark. I was trying to give you a playful. I gave him like such a huge Android roast too.
Oh. Roasted by Android, dude. It takes better pictures on your camera.
So it was Matt Lonsbury.
Yeah.
From Proud Mary.
Been a minute, yeah.
Old
Matty Matt.
Hitting us up about Woosha. So I was like, oh, you don't want to talk to me. Actually, Mark knows everything because Mark and Gene really work with Woosha. So I was like, let me make an introduction. Hey, Mark, you cool if I make a text introduction with,
old Lansbury,
Matt and Kirsten. And
Powerballer.
Like, yeah. And so I'm just like, hey,
Kirsten's
what's up?
awesome
This is
too.
Mark. He knows everything. He's also the director of coffee.
And he's got an Android.
He's got an Android, so it's going to come up green, but it's all good. Like, we're going to be fine.
Did anybody give you a ha-ha?
Mark took it really gracefully, took it in stride. He can take a good roast, which is nice.
He can roast and take a roast.
I appreciate someone who can take a good roast.
He's
That was
a
a little bit of a tangent.
That's great.
I don't know where I was going from there. But yeah, limitations like that. Limitations are everything. They're great. Embrace them. Use them. Use them to channel your creativity. Use them to channel your energy and set a standard. If you have no standard, then you're going to be a victim of this like search for perfectionism that you can never attain, and it's the wackest, dude. It's like, and then we saw that with Portola too. Yeah. When we actually did open, we had to open that week.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, we could just push it one more week. It's like, no, we're opening tomorrow.
Yep. And who's coming with us?
That was pretty fucked up too.
Yeah.
Because
we just did it.
You saved the day on that one because we had the inspection, and then the food safety inspector, which you need a food safety inspection, at least in California, for anywhere who serves milk.
Yeah.
Because it's food. Go figure.
It's wet food. Just like dogs.
In our roastery.
Yeah.
In the also food prep area, it was just like plain concrete. And they're like, we can't have you pass inspection because you need this to be sealed in. It needs to be moppable and food safe. And we're just like, how the fuck are we going to do that? And you're like, let's go to Home Depot. And I was like, that's never going to work. You're like, let's go to Home Depot. So we went to Home Depot and bought a bunch of cheap, crappy garage epoxy and just dumped it everywhere, slapped it on. Jason helped us. I was just like having a panic attack because the roaster was already there. So I'm just like, fuck, dude, like mass masking tape all over the bottom of the roaster. Like, this is not how you do it the right way. And it wasn't perfect because I got some epoxy on the roaster as good as I tried to tape it off. I tried, and what would perfect have been? Perfect would have been like, okay, cool. We're actually going to unbolt the roaster. We're going to pick it back up. We're going to epoxy underneath it. We're going to put it back down. But that wasn't an option because we were opening tomorrow.
Yeah. And we had to.
And we opened.
Because we were out of money.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that was the balance right there. And it's like, you get it done and then you fix it later and it's fine.
Yeah.
Because none of that, again, it didn't go against our core promise.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody came in and said, oh, I saw, one drip of epoxy on the roaster and there's actually a little tiny blank spot on the concrete. Nobody saw that. It didn't matter.
No,
so
it actually weirdly, even though it was shitty, it looked really, compared to what it was at the time, it looked really clean.
Yeah.
And it looked like a garage.
Well, it was what, what we needed. The car people, it's what we call a 10-footer.
Yeah,
Unless you're right next to it, it looks perfect. Yeah,
exactly.
You can't tell.
Yeah.
You're like, damn, that thing's clean.
The pictures, you're like, dang, they did a good job.
Yeah,
That's I was like, dude, this is my first flooring job.
Yeah.
I'm like, I could do another career if this falls apart, dude.
Pretty dialed, and that's what you said earlier, knowing what's really important and knowing what you can let go at any one point in time. And for us, getting open was the most important thing. And the little hack job on the floor epoxy, cool, no big deal.
Yeah, we did it.
It was stressful in the moment, and then after that, we're like, oh, cool, it's done. This meets spec. This is a good standard for us to have right now.
What are your specs? What are your standards?
Hey everyone, that's the podcast for the week. Thanks so much for listening. If you heard something that inspired you, let us know, or tell a friend. These are the types of connections that are the most important to us and that we seek to create every day. If there's something you heard and you want to know more about, send us an email to podcast@catandcloud.com or head to our website, catandcloud.com/podcast, and let us know. While you're on our site, check out everything we have to offer. Dive deep into one of our single origin coffees or pick up a little treat for yourself. We have something for everyone, so check it out. Also, find us in the usual places, YouTube, Instagram. We're always there sharing amazing things. All right, that's it. Thanks everyone for being awesome. We'll be back next week.